hearing like these little things all the time of like what happened. I was watching TV with Evan and another nurse, and it was the middle of the night, and he knew something was wrong because every time I would kind of like doze off, the monitor would be like beep, or it would do something. So they were trying to keep me awake, but at some point everyone was just getting really tired. And I think they were starting to fall asleep, and then I think I fell asleep. And at that point it just like flatlined, it coded. And then the nurse was there, luckily. And luckily I was already on the ventilator. So I was having like oxygen, but my heart wasn't working. And so they tried to do CPR on me. And that didn't work. And I think they broke some of my ribs. And they finally took out those like, I don't know what they're called, those shocker things. At that point, it had already been 10 minutes. And then, so Evan was just like, oh my God, my wife is dead. I think that was like one of like the worst parts for me. You know, because like I hear like the stuff about like, oh, my lungs were this, they had to like do the surgery, I CAT scan, whatever, but I think that thing that happened with Evan was like the worst of all the like, because if you're the one dying, like who cares, you're dead, you're not gonna miss anyone. But if you're the one that's still there, you're gonna miss the one that died. You know? And for him to be there and watch me as I died, I think that was the worst like story for me. Once I got out of the hospital, I was in rehab for 2 months, and then I came home. After 2 months I came home, and after 1 month I started driving. So I guess it would be like 3 months. And they were like, oh yeah, you'll totally be driving, you'll be chasing after your kids, you'll be running. I was like, you're on crack. I can't even get to the bathroom by myself right now, you know? And they were like, you'll be able to do it. Don't even like worry about it. But at the time, I was just like, I didn't know how I was gonna do it. You know, like if they had maybe explained to me how I would do it, it would have been like more real. But they didn't even say like, oh, well, this is how you would drive. You know, they just said you could drive. So then I was just like, well, there's no way, you know? So I think when I started to be more aware of what was happening and where I was and stuff, at some point, someone gave me a mirror. And before I looked into it, I was just expecting to see like myself, the way I looked like the day before I got sick or the day I got sick. So when I looked in the mirror, I was bald and just I had just lost so much weight. I hadn't eaten anything in 4 months, and so I had lost, I would say, about 30 pounds, and I think I maybe weighed like 70 or 80 pounds. So I spent a lot of time watching TV. And my cousins and Evan, like people were buying me DVDs of TV shows because they're generally a lot longer than movies. And so I was watching a lot of Mad Men and Bones, and every time I would watch these TV shows, I would look at how everyone was like running or hiking or wearing like a dress. And I was just so frustrated and like kind of angry that I would never do those things and I would never look like that. It wasn't even like, oh, she has a nice figure or she has nice hair. It was like, she has feet, she has hands, like she has fingers. So at that point, I mean, I would still watch them, but every time I watched it, that's what I would think about, was how I didn't have, not even like the most basic of those things, not like, never mind the clothes or whatever, the hair, but just that I didn't even have the body parts. In therapy, she's like, okay, Linda, she's like, there's this guy, Tyra, he's a prosthetist, and he's also an orthotist. So he treats a lot of the old people for like their diabetes, their walking problems. So he goes there regularly, and he was there, and she said, I just thought you might want to, you know, talk to him. So I said, well, why the hell not, right? So then Tyra comes over, and I don't even know what we talked about, but he was just so nice. So this one day, Tyra brings Brad in. I think about 10 years ago, he had cancer of the esophagus, which is a really rare cancer that like no one recovers from. But he recovered from it. He had all these surgeries. He lost most of his stomach, and he recovered from it. And then about 4 or 5 years after that, he was golfing one day and just felt really sick. And he went home. And when he woke up, there were paramedics all around him. So they took him to the hospital, and at that point, you know, he was so sick that I think maybe the same thing kind of happened to him as what happened to me, but they told him that he was going to lose basically his limbs. They gave him a choice, though. They said, lose them or die. So he said, take them off. I have kids, take them off. So he lost both of his feet, one entire hand, and almost all of the other hand. So basically he has like one thumb. So they come in, and I was like, I had never had like a peer visitor. I didn't know anyone that could help me. And then Tyra was like, Brad drove here, and I was like, oh, wow. Brad has less than I do, you know? And I was like so impressed and shocked that he did that, and he, you know. And then he's like, yeah, so when I got sick and the doctors told me I had to amputate all my limbs, I went to rehab afterwards. He goes, then my wife sends me a letter saying that she's divorcing me and taking my 2 kids. And at that point, he wasn't even home yet. He was still in rehab. So when he got out, he came home to like an empty house. He had nobody to help him. His wife had left him. His kids were gone. His dog was gone. His car was gone. And so he was telling me how when he was in rehab, when he was walking, he was using a walker because he couldn't use a cane because he can't hold it. His therapist told him, just leave the walker, just try to walk. And he was like, I'm scared. But then he did it. And from that day on, he never used a walker, a cane, nothing. He never used anything again. So then they left, and my mom was like, well, you should try walking without the walker. And I was like, hell no. If I fall, and like, this is not a good idea. But she kept pushing me to. So then I was like, all right. So I did it. I had my therapist with me, so I was holding her hand, and we were walking. And at some point I let go, and I was just walking by myself. And then the next day I went home. They let me go because I was able to walk. And they were saying it was going to take me 2 months to walk, blah, blah. So at that point it was about 3 weeks after I had gotten my legs. So they were like, okay, you can go home now. But the day I went home, Tyra came back to see me to make last minute adjustments, whatever. And I asked him about his friend Brad, and I said, well, why is Brad even alive? Like, if I was Brad, I would have killed myself. You know, having had cancer, surviving that, losing all his limbs, having his wife leave him, his kids. And then so Tyra says, well, Brad had really strong faith that helped him, you know, get through it. And I was like, oh, well, I want that. Because at that point I was still really, really like depressed. And so I emailed Brad and I talked to Tyra a little bit more and just kind of like tried to figure out like what this faith was. It's definitely like a 180 from last year. Not only is like my relationship with God much like stronger and more like familiar. Like before I was just like, God's this like scary guy that just does things to me, you know. Now I've kind of learned like that, you know, I need a relationship with him. And I mean, things are good, you know. It's like I feel like a lot of it has to do with just getting back to doing the things I used to do, you know, like with taking care of my kids, cleaning the house, cooking, you know, whatever. I think a combination of that, you know, and one of the big things was also joining the MCs. You know, I really didn't want to join the MC at first because I don't like being around like strangers, and I didn't want people like asking me like what happened to me. But then I did join one, and the support that you get from an MC is just amazing. Like everyone is just so like supportive of you, you know, like even if you're having like a bad year, bad day, whatever, you know, it's not just about studying like whatever book it is that you're, you know, studying. And then after that one MC, I was like, oh, I gotta be another MC, you know? And I think that really helped me, because when I'm not going to an MC, I feel like I'm not as close to God. Like I don't have like people around me. I feel like it's easier to be closer to God when I'm with people in a group of people that are doing the same thing what I'm doing, you know? I think I was just too busy with kids and life. But now it's like my artistic skills, you know, like I'm not using them to like get a career, but I'm using it for Sunday school. I think of fun games or fun projects and activities for them to do, and they seem to love it. So now it's kind of like a different channel of what I originally wanted to do as a kid, you know, and I want to, I don't know if I should say this because then it's like on film, but I want to write a children's book and do all the photography for it, and you know, but in the meantime, I think I'm just using my gifts in a way that God has meant them for me. And before I had gotten sick, I don't know if I even realized it, you know, like I was just thinking, oh, how can I use my skills for like a job? It wasn't like, how can I use it for Sunday school kids, you know? I don't think he did anything to me. I don't think he does that. He just lets things happen. There are like so many things that happen that we don't understand. But you make it what you want of it. You know, this could have happened to me and I could have just taken up drinking and drugs and been like, I'm so sorry for myself, I'm just gonna stay home and like drink myself to death. But I think, I was like, I'm not gonna be like that, I'm not gonna do that. You know, I think God has bigger plans for me.